welcome very much for our debate on the 7 Ds for sustainability. We have been working a lot producing ideas for the next 5 years here in the Martens Centre. And I'm very pleased to have today with us Valérie Niquet from France, one of the leading French experts on China, Japan, Taiwan, and especially also the security aspects in this space. Very much welcome, Valérie Niquet.
Thank you.
Herman Van Rompuy, former Belgian Prime Minister, Finance Minister, and very important President of the European Council during the financial crisis. And I think, Herman Van Rompuy, we owe to you that we went through this financial crisis very well and came out in one piece. So thank you very much for you to be here. We will be discussing today De-Risking Globalization, and we will tap into your huge experience in this sector. Maybe we start with the challenges. Valérie Niquet, challenges China, South China Sea, Taiwan.
Well, there are many challenges when one thinks about China, but when we make a connection between the EU and the future, what we will do in the next 5 years, and China, there are many issues, of course, security issues, you mentioned them. If something happened in the Taiwan Strait or South China Sea, we will be directly affected, of course, because Asia is still, and China is still the place where economic growth is going. And so it would have huge consequences for everyone, including for Europe. China is not too far from Europe to just let it go and let it be. We are completely in connection with what is going on in Asia and in China. But also, more directly for us, one of the main challenges we have is naivety doesn't exist anymore in our relation with China. It started quite a few years ago now, and we are much more realistic about what to expect and what to do in relations with China. But still, there are two main challenges. I think first is a division of interest between different countries in Europe. And China, of course, is playing on these divisions. We remember the 17 plus 1, 16 plus 1 format that China tried to impose on Europe, including EU member. There is also the Belt and Road Initiative, and some countries were very much attracted to that initiative despite difficulties. So divisions is complicated because China can use it. Also opportunity. China is still an opportunity. So this is a great temptation to open our doors, not asking too many questions, because we still feel that China is very important for the economy of the EU. So dealing with these contradictions, China being, as we said, challenger and a very economic competitor, including a strategic or, security challenge too, plus not losing on China also being an opportunity for many companies, many enterprises. So to organize all these expectations is a real challenge, I think.
Herman Van Rompuy, the United States is a very traditional ally of Europe. We owe them a lot, but maybe it's also become a bit of a competitor. The relationship has a bit changed. What do you think? Mm-hmm. What is your experience?
It changed the last 20 years. It changed all the time, starting from the unilateralism of Bush Jr. Then after Bush came the multilateralism of Obama, then the unilateralism of President Trump, and now again some kind of multilateralism of President Biden. So people were asking, where is Europe? Huh? Can Europe speak with one voice? If I had to call Europe, whom I have to call? For the United States, last 20 years, it was not that easy neither. Huh? So that's my first remark. There is a constant change in American approach to the rest of the world. Second, as President of the European Council, I had to do with President Obama. And we shouldn't forget that with the Obama administration, we started a negotiation which is called the TTIP, the Trade investment agreement. So we have already a lot of free trade with the United States, but we want to go further. And then came the trade war with President Trump, from a trade agreement to a trade war in a few years' time. With President Biden, it was complicated in the sense that he didn't take up this idea of this TTIP agreement of his former boss, Obama. He changed. Then we have this relationship with Trade and Technology Council and so on. But it was not as in the old times. So it is a complicated relationship, but still a very good one. And, of course, we had Ukraine. And with Ukraine, we work closely with the United States. The West is back. The G7 is back. And with the rest of the world, with Russia and China, Ukraine plays a very important role. I always say to the Chinese when I talk to them, yes, you didn't like our definition. You are a competitor, you are a partner, and you are a systemic rival. They don't like this word, systemic rival. But no, we go one step further. You are the friend of an enemy. And that's a dramatic change. So the Ukrainian war has a global impact. It is not a regional war.
No.
It is a conflict that goes far beyond the borders of the European continent.
Absolutely. And maybe Valérie Niquet, to come back then to this point, it's a more competitive world. It's a more challenging world. Even the relationship to China is changing, as Herman Van Rompuy has just outlined. What are the solutions? How should we deal with China?
Well, regarding China and solutions, of course, one of the major priority that you mentioned in the 7Debates is the necessity for the EU to really think strategically about what is most important, what are the sectors, because you cannot defend or protect everything, and you have to really focus on what is the most important. We are thinking of decarbonization, the EV vehicle problem with China, which is a huge problem because it's not only subvention in China, it's also the fact that prices in China are much lower than what we can do here, and they can just sell at a very low prices, a thing that the EU consider to me absolutely important in order to adapt to climate change. So we have to deal with these different objectives or sometimes contradictions. Is what we want to do, what is our main policy, and how can we adapt, especially in relations with China. So I think that we have to define very strategically what are the most important sectors in order to protect our industries, because industries are also major, absolutely essential for social stability, as we can see everywhere. Services is not enough in my mind, and we competing on industrialization with China will be a very important, very big challenge, unless China itself, it's a case a little bit, but it's not yet decisive. The Chinese economy is also slowing down, so maybe China will be more amenable to negotiations and trying to protect its own market. So we have to think again strategically regarding China between all member states at the EU level.
Yes. Yes, Herman Van Rompuy, you've also read the 7Ds for sustainability, 175 proposals last year and now worked out much more in detail. What are your suggestions?
Regarding China or regarding...
You can maybe mix the both.
Yeah. First of all, it is a very interesting document, very useful for policymakers, and I hope that the Commission will use it in the right way, and it is really a program for the next legislature. We are living, and that's a commonplace, in a world that has dramatically changed, even since I left office in 2014. We spoke about the United States. You spoke about China, but just to give you one flavor of what changed. With China, we had an economic relationship. It was all about the economy. Now, we know that behind the economy, there is politics. Every facet, every dimension of our relationship with China is political. And there's a dramatic change. And that we have to keep it in mind. We often say we shouldn't be less naive. We are not naive. We were not naive. When I was in office, we had the Eurozone crisis. We had to deal with it, and that was the major challenge we had. And at the end of the day, we found a solution. But now we have to look at how to avoid a catastrophe, decoupling, and how to manage this new concept of de-risking, having relations with China, and at the same time being careful, because we know there is a security dimension in every issue, also the economic issues. There is one thing that I wanted to add, is that climate change, that should, in my view, transcend relations between global players. The challenge is that big. It's the biggest challenge of mankind. And there we have to work as much as possible together, to putting aside all prejudices as much as possible and looking where we can work together. I am aware that also there is a security dimension in it. But we had to make a special effort, and I think that the United States, and for sure John Kerry, had the same mindset. And they worked with China together in the COP conferences, global issues, and so on. So for Europe, we should keep that in mind, that although we are prudent, we are cautious, we have to take the opportunities, not decoupling, but using this vague concept, but can have practical consequences of de-risking. But on climate change, we have to put an underemphasis. What we can do together, we should do together.
So, in fact, China is not only a strategic competitor or a rival, but it's also a partner, has to be a partner in solving some of those global issues, and especially climate change. It's interesting, Herman Van Rompuy, that you say issues can now no longer be clearly separated out. It's not just economics, not just politics. And when we have a look at the report published by Mario Draghi, he's doing exactly this. He has been asked to speak about competitiveness, and he has a chapter on defense. So where do we go from here? What is your view?
This is very important that Europe now, the EU, and through this report by Mario Draghi, is focusing more and more on defense. For a long time, it was very far away, a little bit too far away from our preoccupations, and this is natural, this is related to institutions and so on. But to come back to China and the US, we also have to realize that whatever the president in the US, a lot of people in the United States think that now the priority for the United States, both at the economic competition level, but also of course at the strategic level, is in Asia, is around China, around what China will do. And some people more radical than others, but we can never predict what they might do, consider that the EU should fight for itself, whatever the situation here. So there is a true linkage between the situation in Asia around China, what the US consider to be their own priorities, and what we could do in that very difficult situation.
Herman Van Rompuy.
I think this concept of strategic autonomy, of European sovereignty, is a key concept. And it's not only related to Russia. They withdraw all the consequences, liberating as much as possible us from our dependence on energy. It's not only a concept that we use regarding China, it's also a concept that we use regarding the United States. For the reason I mentioned, because you have this this switch in the United States that we had the last 20 years, so we have to be careful. Now we are with President Biden and the Biden administration, and hopefully with the Harris administration, we have close links, but we have our own interests and our own priorities. And I would say we have to take, there's a word of Chancellor Merkel, we have to take our fate much more in our own hands. Also in Ukraine. We have to be honest. Without the support of the United States, Ukraine would have already lost the war. And that's an idea that is not acceptable for us. Remember in the Clinton time that the United States had to intervene in the Bosnian War and make the change, the change that solved the problem, so to speak. Now we have the United States engaged in Ukraine, and they militarily they are playing an extremely important role. We did our best, but we have to be very lucid on our contribution. We have to do more and to be more effective. So industrial policy, defense policy, strategic autonomy, all those things are linked. Yeah. And that's an approach that is not new. The Draghi report was emphasizing it, but that's an approach that we already had. Now we have, of course, to implement this, and the upcoming years will be absolutely key, the next 5 years. That's why when I see the 7Ds, you start with defense, and you had other dimensions of policies, starting also with a D. But defense is the first one. Defense is the first one. But our industrial resurgence, our industrial revival, doesn't depend only on defense, but it is an important dimension. And in order to be less fragmented, in order to have a bigger impact, we have to use the scale of the European Union. We are too fragmented. Yeah. Not only in security and defense, but also in climate change. We are in the dimension of our big enterprises, in the digital and so on. So everything is linked. That's why the publication is so useful also, because the 7Ds are showing the link between all those dimensions of what our approach in the next 5 years should be. My biggest concern is you can have the best ideas, but you have to put everybody, the 27 countries, on the same page. And there we need a strong Commission, but we need a strong European Council too. And unfortunately, the Franco-German motto is not working anymore as it should be, and as it worked in the past. So we have to overcome internal problems in order to make the European Union stronger. The European Union is not only the sum of the 27 member states, but is also the sum of the 27 member states. If some are missing, some bonds and links are missing, then we are weakening the European Union. The Union has strong community institutions, the Commission, the Parliament, the European Central Bank, but we need also the big political players. This is the other part of the European construction, and so we have to be much more united in order to realize this program in the next 5 years.
I couldn't agree more. We can combine a strong European Parliament, a strong European Commission, a strong European Council, strong member states, because in fact, if one of them is weak, the whole system is weakened. Yeah. So we have chosen here with the 7Ds for sustainability to say we want to think systematically about the future. What is sustainable? What is not only working today, in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years as a political family, also as an offer to new generations, which are desperately looking for answers in a world which has become much more geopolitical, much more dangerous as well. much more challenging. So I would like to thank you both very much, Valérie Niquet, Herman Van Rompuy, for this very interesting, fascinating debate. And thank you very much. We will continue working that a program is also being put into practice. Thank you.
Thank you.